My mom forged my signature, sold the apartment Dad gave me, and ended up in prison. Now I'm rebuilding my life without her. My name is Sarah, and honestly, things between me and my mom, Brenda, a 52-year-old woman, have always been rocky. We never really clicked, but it all started to fall apart after my parents split up when I was around 8. My dad, Bill, who would have been a 58-year-old man, was a good guy, but he couldn't take it anymore. Mom was always on his case about money, how he wasn't doing enough, and she just wore him down. Eventually, he had enough and left. After the divorce, I stayed with Mom, and she wasted no time playing the victim. She'd tell everyone that Dad had abandoned us, but it wasn't like that at all. He still paid child support, visited when he could, and stayed involved, but Mom would take the child support checks, look at them, and scoff, saying things like, "This is all your father thinks you're worth." It messed with me as a kid, made me feel like Dad wasn't doing enough, even though I now see that he was doing everything he could. Things got even worse when Mom met Tom, now a 53-year-old man, a contractor who seemed to be doing all right for himself. They had my half-brother Jake, and after that, I felt like I disappeared. Mom would make these fancy dinners for Tom and Jake, and I was just left to fend for myself most of the time. Sometimes, I'd get home, and there wouldn't even be food for me in the fridge. I was like a ghost in my own home, but the real bomb dropped when I found out Mom was cheating on Tom. It wasn't just some suspicion or a little thing I stumbled across. It was a full-blown, in-your-face kind of discovery. It all happened when I was 17, just a few months away from finishing high school. I remember the day perfectly. It was a Saturday, and I had been out with some friends. We wrapped things up earlier than I expected, so I came home a little earlier than usual. I wasn't really expecting anything, just a quiet afternoon. But the second I walked through the door, something felt off. You know when the house is too quiet, like unnaturally quiet? That's what it was like. I called out, "Mom, Tom," but got no answer. That's when I heard it. Voices coming from upstairs. At first, I thought maybe Mom was just talking on the phone or something, but then I heard a laugh. Not just any laugh, but the kind of laugh she used to do with Tom when they were being all flirty and gross. Except this time, it didn't sound like Tom was the one making her laugh. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't stop myself. I started creeping up the stairs, trying to make as little noise as possible. The voices were getting clearer as I got closer to her bedroom door, and then I heard it, another voice, a man's voice, and it wasn't Tom's. I stopped right outside her door. It was cracked open just enough for me to see in without being noticed. I peeked through the gap, and that's when I saw them, my mom and some random guy. They were all over each other on the bed, wrapped up in the sheets like they didn't have a care in the world. I froze. I couldn't even process what I was seeing at first. My brain just couldn't catch up with what my eyes were looking at. And the worst part? They were laughing like what they were doing was no big deal, like it was just some casual Saturday afternoon thing. Suddenly, I must have made a noise because both of them looked up at the same time. My mom's face went pale. She scrambled to cover herself with the blanket, and the guy, he just smirked. He didn't even try to hide what was happening. He looked at me like I was the one who didn't belong there, like I was interrupting his day. "Sarah, wait, this isn't what it looks like," Mom stammered. But it was exactly what it looked like. She was caught, and there was no talking her way out of it. I didn't even say anything. I couldn't. I just turned and ran. I bolted down the stairs and out of the house without looking back. My mind was racing, my hands were shaking, and all I could think was, what the hell did I just see? I ended up walking around the neighborhood for what felt like hours, trying to wrap my head around it. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to go back and scream at her, to tell Tom to blow everything up, but the other part of me just felt numb, like I couldn't handle dealing with the fallout. So I didn't go back home right away. I crashed at a friend's place for the night and didn't tell anyone what happened. I couldn't. It felt too heavy to say out loud. The next morning, I went back, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. I still had to live there, still had to figure out how to exist in that house knowing what I knew. When I got back, it was like nothing had happened. Mom was in the kitchen, acting like it was just a normal day, like I hadn't just caught her cheating the day before. I didn't even acknowledge her. I went straight to my room, locked the door, and just sat there staring at the wall. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. It was like a switch had flipped, everything felt different. Like the last shred of respect I had for her was gone. After that, things between me and her were basically done. I barely spoke to her. I kept to myself, stayed in my room most of the time, and only came out when I had to. I couldn't confront her again. I wasn't ready for the fight, but I knew one thing. I was counting down the days until I could get out of that house for good. For a few weeks I kept my head down, going through the motions and avoiding her whenever possible, but I couldn't shake that gut feeling, the one that said I had to leave. The problem was, I didn't know where to go. Then I remembered something Dad had mentioned a while back, an apartment. He had been talking about it casually, saying he'd wanted to set something up for me when I was ready to move out after high school. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but now it felt like a lifeline. I decided to call him. It was a Friday after school, and I'd spent the whole day building up the courage. My heart was racing as I dialed his number. When he picked up, his voice was as calm as ever, like he had no idea what was going on. "Hey, kiddo, what's up?" I hesitated for a second, not sure where to start. "Hey, Dad, I need to talk to you about something important." There was a pause. "Of course. What's going on?" I took a deep breath. "I want to move in with you. I can't stay with Mom anymore." There was a moment of silence, and I braced myself for his response. But when he finally spoke, it was exactly what I needed to hear. "Of course you can, Sarah. We'll figure it out, okay? Don't worry." The relief that washed over me was unreal. I had been so scared he'd say no, that he wouldn't want to get involved, but that wasn't my dad. He didn't ask a million questions or make it complicated. He just said yes, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I'll come pick you up tomorrow," he added. "Pack up what you need." That night, I packed everything I could fit into a few bags. I didn't even care about leaving most of my stuff behind. I just wanted to get out. Mom didn't say a word to me. She acted like she didn't notice me packing, and maybe she didn't. I think part of her just didn't care. She had Tom and Jake, and I wasn't part of her world anymore. Dad showed up the next day, right on time. When I got into the car with my bags, he didn't ask for details, and I appreciated that. He just drove, and we didn't talk much on the way to his place. Once we got there, I finally felt like I could breathe again. Later that evening, after I settled into my new room, Dad knocked on the door. He came in and sat on the edge of the bed, his usual calm self. "I know things have been rough," he said, "but I've been thinking. You remember that apartment I mentioned a while back?" I nodded, curious where this was going. "Well, I was planning to give it to you once you graduated, but I think now's a good time. You deserve something of your own, especially after everything that's been happening with your mom." I was stunned. "Wait, you're giving me an apartment?" "Yeah," he said with a small smile. "It's nothing too fancy, but it's yours. You're 17 now, and I want you to have it. There's just one thing, you're still technically under your mom's custody, so her name has to be on the paperwork for now. But once you turn 18, we'll get it fully transferred to you." I couldn't believe it. I hadn't even considered that this was an option. But suddenly it felt like my whole world was changing for the better. The idea of having my own place, away from all the chaos, was like a dream come true. We went to check it out the next weekend. It wasn't huge, but it was perfect for me. Just a small one-bedroom place, close enough to my school so I could still finish out the year, but far enough away from my mom that I could breathe. As we walked through the apartment, I couldn't help but feel like this was the beginning of something new, something better. Of course, there was the whole issue of Mom's name being on the paperwork. Legally, she still had custody, so we didn't have a choice. But Dad reassured me that it was just temporary, that as soon as I turned 18, it would be all mine. I trusted him. He had never let me down before. After we signed the papers, things moved pretty quickly. I split my time between Dad's house and the new apartment, getting everything set up and ready to go. It was like I was finally taking control of my own life, and it felt amazing. Mom didn't really care. I think she was just relieved I wasn't around to remind her of what I'd caught her doing. She never asked me about the apartment, never tried to get involved. It was like I didn't exist to her anymore, which, honestly, was fine by me. The less I had to deal with her, the better. Living with Dad had been a breath of fresh air. He wasn't overbearing or controlling like Mom. He gave me space but was always there when I needed him. We'd have dinner together, watch TV, and just talk about life. It felt normal, something I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was during one of those dinners when Dad brought up the apartment again. "You know, Sarah," he said, "you've done a great job balancing everything. If you ever want to rent out the apartment once you go to college, that's a solid option. It's good to have that kind of income on the side." It was like a light bulb went off in my head. The apartment was great, but once I moved to the other side of town for school, it wasn't exactly practical to keep living there. Renting it out could help me cover my expenses, especially since college wasn't cheap. I told Dad I'd think about it, but in the back of my mind, I knew it was a solid plan. I had no idea at the time that the apartment would become the center of a whole new storm later on. But for now, everything seemed like it was finally falling into place. I had Dad's support, my own place, and a future that felt like it was mine to shape. After a couple of years, my dad passed away, and everything flipped upside down again. It's hard to explain what it feels like when you lose someone like that. Dad had always been my steady rock, the one person I could count on, so when he got sick, it hit me hard. Cancer is a cruel thing. It took him faster than I ever expected. One day he was just fine, and the next I was watching him get weaker by the day. I quit my job to take care of him. It wasn't even a question. I'd do anything for him. By the time he passed, I was completely wrecked. I'd put everything into taking care of him, and suddenly, he was gone. The apartment was mine now, fully in my name, and I should have felt some relief knowing I had a place to stay. But instead, I just felt lost. That's when my mom started coming back into the picture. Now keep in mind, we hadn't spoken much after I moved out. She knew I had my own place, but she never showed any interest in my life. She never even asked how I was doing after I left her house. So when she suddenly reached out after Dad's death, I wasn't sure what to think. Part of me wanted to believe that maybe she had changed, that maybe losing Dad had woken her up to the fact that life was too short for all the crap she'd put me through. I was grieving, so I guess I was vulnerable, and wanted to believe she was trying to be there for me. At first it seemed okay. She called me a few times, checking in, asking how I was doing. I wasn't exactly warm and welcoming, but I also didn't push her away. I was lonely, and it was nice to have someone asking about me for once, even if it was her. The conversations were pretty surface level. She never brought up anything from the past, and I didn't either. I wasn't ready to dive into all of that, and honestly, I didn't think she would ever be ready to take responsibility for her part in everything. But things started to shift not long after. It started small. One day she called and casually mentioned how Jake was getting ready for college, and how expensive tuition was. I didn't think much of it at the time. I just nodded along, saying stuff like, "Yeah, college can be expensive," thinking that was the end of it. But then, every conversation after that seemed to revolve around money. She'd drop little hints about how tough things were for her and Tom, about how the economy was making it harder to get by. I wasn't really picking up on it at first because, well, I wasn't looking for it, but then she flat out asked me for help. "I was wondering if you could lend us some money for Jake's college tuition," she said one day over the phone. I sat there, stunned for a second, trying to process what I'd just heard. My brain was still in the mode of thinking maybe this was her attempt to fix things between us, but now it felt like she was just seeing me as an ATM. "Wait, what?" I said, not sure if I'd heard her right. "I mean, you've got the apartment, and with you renting it out now, you must have some extra money coming in. Jake's really struggling to get all his scholarships lined up, and Tom and I are doing our best, but..." She trailed off, like I was supposed to jump in and offer. I didn't. I just sat there in silence for a moment, feeling like the rug had been pulled out from under me. Here I was, grieving Dad, still trying to figure out what my life looked like without him. And my mom, who I hadn't had a real relationship with in years, was asking me for money. "I can't help you with that," I finally said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm just starting to get back on my feet after everything with Dad." There was an awkward silence on the line, like she wasn't expecting me to say no. I could feel the shift in her tone when she spoke again. "I understand," she said, but her voice was tight. "I just thought, with everything going on, maybe you'd want to help your brother." I didn't take the bait. After that call, things between us got weird. She stopped calling as much, and when she did, it was short and to the point. I could feel her pulling away, and honestly, I didn't really mind. I was too drained from everything else to deal with her guilt trips. But what I didn't expect was for her to take things a step further. A few weeks after that phone call, I got a message from my tenant at the apartment. They were freaking out, saying they'd received an eviction notice. I was confused as hell, because I hadn't given any notice to vacate, or even thought about selling the place. So, I called them back to figure out what was going on. Turns out, my apartment had been sold, and not just sold, it had been sold without me even knowing about it. My first thought was that this had to be some sort of scam or mistake. There was no way this was legit, right? I immediately contacted my lawyer, and we started digging into the paperwork. That's when the bomb dropped. My mom, who still had her name on the apartment paperwork from when I was underage, had forged my signature to sell the place. I was floored, completely blindsided. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I mean, who does that? Who sells their kid's apartment without telling them? I was shaking when I called her. "What the hell did you do?" I shouted as soon as she picked up the phone. "Did you really sell my apartment?" She didn't even seem fazed. "I didn't think it was a big deal," she said, her voice annoyingly calm. "You weren't using it, and Jake needed the money for school. It was just sitting there." I was speechless. This wasn't some small misunderstanding. This was my apartment, the place Dad gave me, the place that was supposed to be mine, and she just sold it like it was hers to do whatever with. I tried to hold it together, but I couldn't. "I can't believe you did this," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You had no right." "Well, technically my name was still on the paperwork," she said. "Like that made it okay. And besides, it's going to a good cause. Your brother needs that money." That was it for me. I couldn't believe my own mom had gone behind my back, forged my signature, and sold something that wasn't even hers to sell. And for what? To help Jake? I had nothing against him, but this wasn't about him. This was about her crossing a line that I didn't even think was possible. She sold something that wasn't hers, something my dad had given me, and then acted like it was no big deal. I knew I needed to do something about it, and the first step was confronting her in person. I drove to her house that same afternoon, my mind racing the whole time. I wasn't sure what I was going to say, but I knew I had to get it out. When I got there, I didn't waste time. I walked right up to the door, barely knocking before stepping inside. She was in the kitchen, humming to herself, acting like her world was perfectly fine while mine was flipped upside down. She looked up and smiled, like she didn't just pull the rug out from under me. "Oh, hey Sarah, what brings you by?" I couldn't believe how casual she was acting, like everything was normal, like she hadn't just sold my apartment behind my back. My heart was pounding, and I was so angry I could barely keep my voice steady. "You really think what you did was okay?" I snapped. "Selling my apartment without even telling me?" Her smile faded, but she didn't look as guilty as I thought she should. "I told you, Sarah, Jake needed help for school, and you weren't using it anyway," she said, shrugging like it was no big deal. It was just sitting there empty. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was acting like selling the apartment was some small thing, like it didn't matter. "It wasn't yours to sell, Mom. That apartment was mine." "You forged my signature," I said, practically yelling at this point. She crossed her arms and leaned against the counter, still way too calm for someone who had just committed fraud. "Technically, my name was still on the paperwork, and I'm your mother. I did what I thought was best for the family." That phrase, "what was best for the family," it made me want to scream. She wasn't doing anything for the family. She was doing this for herself, using Jake as an excuse. I couldn't believe she was just brushing it off like it was nothing. "You have no idea what you've done," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "This wasn't about what was best for anyone. This was about you thinking you could take something that wasn't yours." She rolled her eyes, like I was being dramatic. "You're overreacting. It's just money, Sarah. Your brother needed it for school. You've got your own life now, and you didn't even need that apartment." My hands were shaking at this point. I took a deep breath, trying to hold it together. "You forged my name, Mom. Do you even understand how illegal that is? You think you can just take something from me and use it like your personal piggy bank?" She sighed, clearly tired of the conversation. "I'm your mother, Sarah. I didn't think you'd be so ungrateful about this. I was trying to help your brother. You'll be fine. You always are." Ungrateful? She had the nerve to call me ungrateful? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was beyond her usual selfishness. This was criminal. And she was acting like I was the problem. "I've already contacted my lawyer," I said, and her face changed instantly. That calm, smug attitude was gone. She straightened up, and for the first time, I saw her actually get nervous. "What do you mean your lawyer?" she asked, trying to sound casual. But I could hear the edge in her voice. "I mean, I'm taking legal action against you," I said, my voice cold. "You committed fraud. This isn't just some misunderstanding, Mom. You sold something that wasn't yours to sell, and you're going to pay for that." The color drained from her face, and for a second, she didn't say anything. I think she finally realized just how deep in she was. "Sarah, you don't need to do this," she said, her voice a little more desperate now. "We're family. We can work this out." I shook my head, feeling all the anger bubbling up again. "No, we can't. You made sure of that the moment you forged my name. You didn't even think twice about it, did you? You didn't care what I wanted or needed. This was all about you, and I'm done letting you walk all over me." She was silent for a moment, like she was trying to figure out how to talk her way out of this. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," she finally said. "I was just trying to help Jake, and I thought..." "You thought you could do whatever you wanted," I interrupted. "You didn't care about the consequences. You never do. But this time, you're not getting away with it." I turned and started walking out of the kitchen, but she called after me. "Sarah, wait! Please don't do this. We're family. You don't want to take this to court." I stopped at the door and turned to face her one last time. "I didn't want any of this, but you left me no choice." I walked out and didn't look back. I felt like my whole world was crashing down, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She had pushed me too far this time, and there was no going back. The next few days were a blur of phone calls with my lawyer, emails, and collecting documents. My lawyer told me I had a solid case. Everything she did, every forged document, every shady detail, was coming to light. It was exhausting, but I had to keep pushing forward. I wasn't just fighting for my apartment, I was fighting for myself, for everything she'd taken from me, emotionally and financially. I wasn't ready for the legal battle ahead, but I didn't have a choice. Final update: it took months of back and forth, legal filings, and endless stress. But in the end, justice came through. The court ruled in my favor. My mom had indeed forged my signature to sell my apartment, and everything she did was not only illegal but completely shameless. When I got the news, I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. After all the chaos, it was finally over. The ruling was clear. Mom was found guilty of forgery and fraud. She had gone behind my back, sold something that wasn't hers to sell, and pretended like it was nothing. It was more than just about money. It was about trust, or whatever was left of it. But now it didn't matter. She was going to prison, and I wasn't going to lose what my dad had given me. When I heard the judge's decision, it didn't hit me right away. It felt surreal, like this couldn't really be happening. Part of me didn't even want it to come to this. I mean, who wants to send their own mother to prison? But at the same time, I knew this was the consequence of her actions. She crossed a line I couldn't ignore, and it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about standing up for what was right. Mom tried to act tough during the trial, like she still had the upper hand, but by the end, you could see the fear in her eyes. She knew she'd lost, and the reality was sinking in. When they handed down her sentence, I didn't feel happy or triumphant. I felt empty. She was going to prison for fraud, and I didn't think there was any way our relationship could recover from this. Not that I wanted it to. She'd made her choice, and now she had to face the consequences. But the apartment wasn't the only thing hanging over her head. There was something else I needed to deal with, Tom. See, throughout all of this, Tom had no idea what had been going on. He didn't know about the forged documents, the fraud, or the apartment sale. But more importantly, he didn't know about the affair I caught my mom in all those years ago. I'd been holding on to that secret for way too long, and after everything that had happened, I knew I couldn't keep it in anymore. It was time for Tom to know the truth. I wasn't sure how to approach it. I mean, how do you tell someone that their wife cheated on them, that she'd been lying to them for years? I debated with myself for a while, but eventually, I decided the best thing to do was just rip off the Band-Aid. He deserved to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. So, I met up with Tom. We sat down, and after some awkward small talk, I just came out with it. "Tom, I need to tell you something, and it's not going to be easy to hear," I said. He looked at me, confused, but he could tell I was serious. "What is it?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "A few years ago, when I was 17, I caught Mom cheating on you. I didn't know how to tell you at the time, so I kept it to myself. But after everything that's happened, I can't keep it in anymore. You need to know." His face went pale. I could see the shock hit him like a brick. She cheated on me?" he stammered, like he couldn't even process the words. When I explained everything, the day I came home early and saw her with some random guy, the way she laughed it off, how I'd kept quiet all these years because I didn't know how to deal with it. I told him how much it had weighed on me. But I also told him that after the fraud, after the court case, I realized I couldn't let her lies control my life anymore. Tom just sat there for a moment, staring at the table. I could see the anger building in his eyes, the way his hands clenched into fists. "I had no idea," he finally whispered. "I had no idea she was capable of all this." I didn't say anything. What could I say? It wasn't like I could make it any easier for him. "First, she screws you over with the apartment, and now I find out she's been lying to me for years," he muttered, almost to himself. Then he looked up at me, and I could see the pain in his eyes. "Thank you for telling me. I wish I'd known sooner, but thank you." After that conversation, things moved quickly. Tom filed for divorce. He couldn't stay with her, not after everything that had come to light. Between the forgery, the fraud, and now the affair, it was clear their marriage was over, and honestly, I think he was ready to be done with her. She'd manipulated him just like she had with me, and he finally saw her for who she really was. In the end, she lost everything. Her marriage was over, her relationship with me was gone, and she was in prison. I wish I could say I felt some sort of satisfaction from it, but I didn't. It just felt sad, all of it. I got the money from the sale of the apartment back, and I used it to buy my own house, a place that was mine, with no strings attached. It felt like a fresh start, something I desperately needed after all the drama. I haven't spoken to my mom since she was sentenced, and honestly, I don't plan to. There's no fixing what she did. Some things are just too broken to repair. As for Tom, we're not super close, but we've kept in touch here and there. I think he's just trying to figure out how to rebuild his life, and I can't blame him. It's hard when you realize someone you trusted was lying to you all along. And Jake? He's doing okay. He's in college now, and we talk sometimes. He didn't know anything about what Mom had done, and I don't blame him for any of it. I think he's just as shocked as I am by all of it, and he's trying to figure out how to move forward too. We're working on building a relationship, but it's hard with everything that's happened. So, that's it. That's where things stand now. It's been a long road, but I'm finally at a place where I feel like I can breathe again. Mom's in prison, Tom's free of her, and I'm moving on with my life. It's not the ending I imagined, but it's the one I got.